Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The information provided in this video, including all discussions regarding the divorce now concept in United States community structures, is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This content does not constitute legal, financial, or professional psychological advice. Family law, property rights, and community regulations vary significantly by state and jurisdiction. The concepts discussed here are theoretical frameworks and historical analyses intended to provide perspective on social trends. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals, such as licensed attorneys or certified financial planners, before making any significant life decisions or legal changes. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a suburban cul-de-sac in a standard American town. To your left is a house that looks exactly like yours, and to your right is another. You know your neighbors' names, you know what cars they drive, and you might even know when their trash day is. But despite this proximity, there is a profound, invisible wall between these structures. Now, consider a staggering statistic. Research into American social dynamics suggests that nearly 20% of adults in long-term domestic partnerships report feeling emotionally estranged while still living under the same roof. This is what social scientists sometimes refer to as a psychological divorce or an internal exit. We are living in an era where the physical structures of our communities, the very way we build our houses and zones, might actually be accelerating the breakdown of our most intimate contracts. What if the traditional American community structure is no longer a safety net, but a pressure cooker that forces individuals into a state of permanent stagnation? In this deep dive masterclass, we are exploring a radical and often misunderstood framework, the divorce now concept. This is not a call to end every relationship or to abandon every community, but rather a strategic methodology for evaluating social and legal contracts that have reached a point of diminishing returns. We are going to look at the historical trends that led us here, the potential outcomes of staying in failing structures, and the step-by-step reality of how U.S. community designs influence our personal autonomy. By the end of this series, you will understand how the geography of where you live dictates the longevity of how you live. We are opening a loop today on the invisible tax of social compliance, the cost you pay every single day for maintaining a structure that no longer supports your growth. The problem this solves for the modern U.S. audience is the paralysis of choice. Most Americans feel trapped between two extremes: the isolation of the lone wolf and the stifling pressure of outdated communal expectations. Today, we solve that by providing the data and the framework to see these structures for what they are. We are moving beyond the surface-level marriage advice and diving into the socio-economic architecture of the United States. We are going to discuss why the 1950s nuclear family model was a historical anomaly, not a permanent standard, and how failing to recognize this can lead to catastrophic personal and financial outcomes. To understand the divorce now concept, we must first analyze the math of social exchange. Social scientists often use a variation of the social exchange theory to predict the stability of a relationship or a community bond. This can be expressed through a simple yet profound formula. In this equation, S represents stability, O represents the perceived outcomes or benefits, C represents the costs of staying, Alt represents the perceived quality of alternatives, and INV represents the investment or sunk cost. For decades, the American community structure was designed to maximize INV, to make the cost of leaving so high that individuals would stay regardless of the quality of O. This was achieved through zoning laws that prioritized single-family homes, the lack of public transit which forced car dependency, and the tie-in of health insurance to specific professional and familial structures. When we look at historical trends, we see that the U.S. community was once built on a three-tier system. Tier 1 was the home, Tier 2 was the workplace, and Tier 3 was the third place, the barbershops, churches, and town squares where people gathered without the pressure of domestic or professional obligation. However, in the last 40 years, the American landscape has undergone a radical de-tiering. The third place has largely vanished, replaced by digital echoes and big-box retail. This shift has placed an unsustainable burden on the Tier 1 structure, the home. We now expect our partners and our immediate neighbors to be our everything: our emotional support, our entertainment, our security, and our social circle. The divorce now concept suggests that when a structure, be it a marriage, a business partnership, or a local community association, fails to provide the outcomes, O necessary to offset the costs, C, the most rational path is a proactive separation. This is not about being impulsive, it is about case study analysis. Look at the historical trend of gray divorce in the United States. Since 1990, the divorce rate for U.S. adults ages 50 and older has roughly doubled. This isn't because people suddenly became less committed. It is because the structural incentives for staying in a stagnant environment, such as the social stigma of being a divorcee, or the absolute financial ruin of a split, have shifted. The divorce now mindset applies this logic to every level of community. It asks, if I were starting from scratch today, would I sign this contract? Consider the structural impact of the American suburb. In a traditional European or early American village, housing was dense and communal. If a relationship was struggling, there were external outlets and support systems within walking distance. Today, if you live in a standard U.S. suburb, your physical environment is designed for containment. Your backyard is fenced, your garage is an airlock, and your interaction with the community is often limited to a wave through a windshield. This creates a feedback loop where the only person you interact with is the person you are potentially in conflict with. The Divorce Now framework teaches us to identify when the physical structure of our lives is sabotaging our emotional infrastructure. We must also address the sunk cost fallacy, which is the psychological tendency to continue an endeavor once an investment in money, effort, or time has been made. In the context of U.S. community structures, this often manifests as staying in a declining neighborhood or a failing partnership because we've already spent 15 years here. But from a data-driven perspective, those 15 years are gone. They are sunk. The only thing that matters for your potential outcomes is the value of the next 15 years. Step by step, we are going to deconstruct how to audit your current social and communal contracts. We will look at the geographic audit. Is your physical location increasing your conflict surface area? The legal audit. What are the actual historical trends of asset division in your specific state? And how does the Divorce Now concept mitigate surprise severance? The community audit. Are you part of a structure of growth or a structure of maintenance? This is not a guide on how to walk away from everything you love. It is a guide on how to stop being a prisoner to structures that were designed for a world that no longer exists. We are moving away from the era of passive endurance and into the era of active alignment. If the community structure around you is crumbling, if the neighborhood association is more interested in the height of your grass than the health of your family, or if your domestic contract has become a source of consistent deficit, the Divorce Now concept provides the intellectual tools to navigate the exit before the system collapses on its own. This masterclass is about reclamation. It is about understanding that in the United States, you are the CEO of your own life, and every community you belong to is a vendor. If the vendor is failing to deliver, it is time to review the contract. We are going deep into the logistics of this in the coming sections, starting with the evolution of the American social contract and why it was never meant to be permanent. Prepare yourself, because once you see these structures for what they really are, you can never go back to just getting by. To understand why the American social contract was never intended to be a permanent, unchanging monolith, we have to travel back to the mid-1940s. Post-World War II America was an era of unprecedented social engineering. The United States government, through initiatives like the GI Bill and the Federal Housing Administration, essentially subsidized a very specific way of life. This was the birth of the modern nuclear family structure. Before this period, historical trends show that multi-generational housing and dense urban living were the norm. People lived in tiers of support, where grandparents, aunts, and cousins provided the emotional and logistical labor that we now outsource to corporations or expect a single partner to provide. When the U.S. shifted toward the suburban model, it fundamentally rewrote the social contract without a clause for expiration. Imagine if you were Mark, a software architect living in a master-planned community in 2026. Mark lives in a beautiful home, but he is subject to an intricate web of community structures that he never actively negotiated. He pays his homeowners association fees, he follows the architectural guidelines, and he maintains a lawn that serves no ecological purpose. Mark is technically part of a community, yet he feels more isolated than ever. This is because the American community structure of 2026 has become a service-level agreement rather than a support network. Mark is realizing that the contract he signed, the one that promised safety and stability in exchange for conformity, is no longer delivering the outcomes he needs for his mental and professional growth. The Divorce Now concept, when applied to Mark's situation, isn't necessarily about him moving out or leaving his family. It is about him divorcing the outdated expectations of the 1950s suburban model. Historically, These structures were designed to maximize consumption. If every household is an island, every household needs its own lawnmower, its own 2 cars, its own subscription services, and its own high-speed internet. From a macroeconomic perspective, the nuclear family is the ultimate consumer unit. However, from a personal perspective, it is often an efficiency trap. By isolating ourselves into these individual units, we have increased our overhead costs, both financial and emotional, to a breaking point. Case studies of modern intentional communities in states like Colorado and Oregon show a counter-trend. These groups are applying a structural divorce from the standard U.S. zoning model. They are moving toward co-housing structures where private dwellings are smaller, but communal spaces are vast. In these models, the potential outcomes include reduced financial stress and increased social capital. They are effectively divorcing the burden of the single-family maintenance cycle. But why do we find it so hard to leave these structures? It comes down to the cost of exit, which has been artificially inflated. In the U.S., your community structure is often tied to your net worth. For most Americans, the primary residence represents the vast majority of their wealth. This creates a financial lock-in. If you decide that the suburban social contract is failing you, the cost to exit, realtor fees, capital gains taxes, the loss of a 3% mortgage rate from years prior, can feel insurmountable. This is what we call structural enclosure. The system is designed to make the status quo the path of least resistance, even if the status quo is actively detrimental to your well-being. Let's look at the contract of conformity that exists in modern U.S. professional circles. In 2026, the boundary between who you are and where you live has blurred. Your zip code acts as a credit score for your social standing. Historical trends indicate that as economic inequality rises, the pressure to maintain the appearance of stability becomes a full-time job. This is a core pillar of the Divorce Now deep dive. Recognizing that you are likely spending a significant portion of your income and energy maintaining a social facade for a community that doesn't actually provide you with safety. Imagine if you took the energy you spend on social maintenance, the dinner parties you don't want to attend, the neighborhood gossip you feel forced to engage in, the constant pressure to keep up with the Joneses, and reallocated it toward personal sovereignty. This is where the concept of applying the Divorce Now concept becomes a masterclass in efficiency. It is the process of auditing every social obligation and asking, is this a legacy requirement or a current necessity? In the United States, we have been conditioned to view longevity as the ultimate metric of success. We celebrate the 50th anniversary, the 30-year career, the family that has lived in the same town for 4 generations. But in a rapidly shifting 2026 economy, longevity can often be a synonym for stagnation. The historical data on American mobility shows a sharp decline since the 1980s. People are moving less, taking fewer risks, and staying in failing structures longer. This immobility trend is a primary driver of the current mental health crisis. When you feel that you cannot exit a structure, be it a neighborhood, a job, or a relationship, you enter a state of learned helplessness. The Divorce Now methodology flips this. It suggests that by embracing the power of the exit, you actually improve the quality of your staying. When a community knows that its members are there by active choice, rather than structural entrapment, the quality of the interaction changes. We see this in case studies of modern freelance collectives and digital nomad hubs. Because the cost of exit is low, the incentive to provide value is high. Compare this to a standard U.S. suburb where the cost of exit is high. Because it is so difficult for your neighbors to leave, there is very little incentive for the community to actually be communal. You are stuck with each other. So the social contract degrades into a series of passive-aggressive disputes over property lines. As we move forward in this deep dive, we have to confront the architecture of isolation. The way our houses are built, facing away from each other, separated by asphalt, is a physical manifestation of a social contract that prioritizes private control over collective resilience. In 2026, as we face increasing economic volatility and environmental shifts, the private control model is showing its cracks. The Divorce Now concept isn't just a personal tool. It is a survival strategy for the mid-21st century. It is about identifying which structures are anti-fragile, getting stronger under stress, and which ones are brittle. Most American community structures are currently brittle. They rely on a very specific set of conditions to function: stable interest rates, cheap energy, and a high degree of social compliance. When those conditions fluctuate, the structure breaks. By applying the divorce now lens, you are essentially stress testing your life. You are looking for the points of failure before the crisis hits. But how do you actually begin the decoupling process without destroying your financial foundation? How do you navigate the legal and social minefields of exiting a contract that society tells you is sacred? And most importantly, what does the post-structure life actually look like in a country that is obsessed with belonging? In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the financial architecture of the exit. We will explore how the U.S. tax code and property laws are actually invisible guardrails designed to keep you in the maintenance loop, and how the elite are already using contractual fluidity to bypass these traps. We are going to look at the case study of the micro-exit, how to divorce the concept of traditional ownership, while still building massive equity in your own autonomy. The loop is widening. If your community isn't an asset, it is a liability. It is time to learn how to liquidate the social debt you've been carrying for years. To truly liquidate the social debt you have been carrying for years, we must first define the ledger. In the United States of 2026, social debt is the accumulated weight of obligations, expectations, and financial outlays required to maintain a specific status within a community structure that no longer provides a positive return on investment. Historically, Americans have been taught that equity is something you build only in a house or a 401k. But there is a more volatile form of equity: social equity. When you are over-leveraged in a community that demands your constant presence, your conformity, and your compliance with outdated norms, you are effectively operating in a deficit. Let us look at a case study involving a character named James. It is 2026, and James is a 42-year-old project manager living in a high-tier suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. On paper, James is successful. He owns a home valued at $750,000. He has 2 cars, and his children attend a top-rated school district. However, James is a victim of structural enclosure. To maintain his position in this community, James pays a literal and metaphorical tax. The literal tax includes a $6,000 annual property tax and $400 a month in homeowners association fees. The metaphorical tax is the 20 hours a month he spends on community maintenance, attending neighborhood meetings to discuss fence heights, participating in social rituals that he finds draining, and managing the optics of a perfect life. The divorce now concept suggests that James needs to perform an exit audit. If we look at historical trends, the American middle class has traditionally viewed the mortgage as a forced savings account. But in the economic climate of 2026, where property values in some sectors have plateaued and the cost of maintenance has risen by 30% due to labor shortages, the house is no longer a guaranteed asset. It is a stationary liability. James is tethered to a physical location not by choice, but by the fear of liquidating his social debt. He fears that if he leaves, he loses his identity. The data shows a different potential outcome. Those who decouple their identity from their zip code often see a 15% to 25% increase in their disposable income and a significant reduction in cortisol levels. Step by step, James must navigate the financial architecture of the exit. This begins with understanding the invisible guardrails of the U.S. tax code. For decades, the tax code has been structured to incentivize staying. The mortgage interest deduction and the primary residence capital gains exclusion are designed to keep the American public anchored. These are not just financial benefits, they are social steering mechanisms. Make the divorce from a traditional community structure feel like a financial penalty. However, the elite in the United States have long used a different framework: contractual fluidity. Imagine if James didn't own his home in his own name. Imagine if it were held in a land trust or an LLC. By moving from direct ownership to contractual control, the elite can divorce their personal liability from their physical location. They can exit a community, a city, or even a state with minimal friction because they have decoupled their personhood from their property. This is the micro-exit. It is the process of stripping away the emotional baggage of ownership and treating your living situation as a service-level agreement. Historical trends show that whenever the cost of social maintenance exceeds the social ROI, a migration occurs. We saw this in the Great Migration of the early 20th century and the Sun Belt shift of the late 20th century. In 2026, we are seeing the digital decoupling. People are realizing that the community support they were promised in exchange for their high property taxes is often non-existent. When a crisis hits, be it economic or environmental, the suburban structure often leaves individuals isolated. The divorce now concept is about recognizing this failure before the crisis occurs. Consider the architecture of the next connection. If you divorce yourself from the traditional U.S. community structure, where do you go? This is where we look at the potential outcomes of intentional liquidity. Instead of sinking $200,000 into a down payment that is locked in a static neighborhood, individuals are beginning to use that capital to fund modular lives. This might mean fractional ownership in multiple locations or investing in portable equity, like diverse liquid assets that aren't tied to a local real estate market. Let's look at the math of the social debt liquidation. If James sells his home and moves to a flexible living arrangement, he eliminates the $4,800 annual HOA fee and the $6,000 property tax. He also eliminates the optics tax, the money spent on exterior landscaping and social signaling, required by his peer group. Over 10 years, even assuming a modest 5% return on the liquidated equity, James is looking at a potential outcome of over $400,000 in additional wealth. More importantly, he has reclaimed the 2,400 hours he would have spent on social maintenance. That is over 100 full days of life reclaimed from a structure that was not serving him. Step by step, the audit looks like this. Calculate the total cost of membership. This isn't just your mortgage. It is the taxes, the fees, the maintenance, and the social signaling costs. Evaluate the ROI. List the tangible benefits your community provided in the last 12 months. Did they help you in a crisis? Did they provide professional leads? Did they improve your health? Identify the exit friction. What is stopping you from leaving today? Is it a legal contract, a financial penalty, or a psychological fear of being unanchored? Execute a micro-exit. Start by divorcing small parts of the social contract. Stop attending the unproductive meetings. Stop spending on the optics tax. See if the community notices. Often the debt we feel we owe is entirely self-imposed. The reality of 2026 is that the United States is no longer a collection of stable, permanent neighborhoods. It is a high-speed marketplace of ideas and labor. Staying in a brittle structure because of a perceived social obligation is like holding a declining stock because you like the logo. The divorce now concept is the ultimate sell signal for your social ledger. But there is a deeper layer to this. When you liquidate your social debt, you create a vacuum. Humans are social creatures, and we are not built for total isolation. The danger of the divorce now concept is that if you don't have a plan for what comes next, you might fall into the trap of atomic loneliness. How do you build a new, anti-fragile community that doesn't demand your soul in exchange for a sense of belonging? How do you create social equity that is portable and resilient? In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to look at the psychological infrastructure of the new American nomad. We will dive into the case study of the 100-hour rule, how to build deep, meaningful connections in any environment without signing a 30-year social contract. We are going to explore how to beta test a community before you commit a single dollar or hour to it. The loop is tightening. You've learned how to see the trap and how to calculate the exit. Now we learn where to go when the gates finally open. The transition from resident to sovereign is the most dangerous part of the journey. Are you ready for the relocation of the self? The relocation of the self begins with a cold, hard look at what happens the moment you stop being a resident and start being a sovereign. In the United States of 2026, the transition is often met with a peculiar kind of social vertigo. You have successfully liquidated your social debt, you have decoupled your finances from a stagnant zip code, and you have stepped outside the traditional suburban enclosure. But suddenly you are faced with the void. This is the danger zone of atomic loneliness, a state where the old structures are gone, but new resilient ones haven't yet taken their place. To survive this, you need more than just a moving truck. You need a psychological infrastructure that is as portable as your bank account. Imagine a case study involving a character named Sarah. It is 2026, and Sarah is a 35-year-old freelance digital strategist who recently applied the divorce now concept to her life in a prestigious neighborhood in Northern Virginia. She realized her social circle was entirely composed of other residents whose only commonality was their proximity and their shared anxiety over property values. She sold her home, exited her local committees, and moved into a high-flexibility living arrangement in a growing tech hub in Denver. For the first 3 months, Sarah felt a profound sense of failure. She had the financial freedom she wanted, but her phone was silent. She had divorced her old community but hadn't learned how to marry a new one. She was still using a resident operating system in a sovereign world. The resident operating system relies on passive accumulation. You live somewhere long enough and eventually through sheer proximity you have friends. The sovereign operating system, however, relies on active curation. Historical trends in American sociology show that the average adult loses their ability to form deep bonds once they exit the forced socialization of school or the traditional office. In 2026, with the rise of remote work and the erosion of local civic organizations, this problem has reached a fever pitch. To solve this, the sovereign must employ the 100-hour rule. Case studies from social researchers like Jeffrey Hall at the University of Kansas have historically suggested that it takes roughly 50 hours of time spent together to move from an acquaintance to a casual friend, and about 200 hours to become a close friend. For the person applying the divorce now concept, waiting 200 hours for a support system is a luxury they cannot afford. The sovereign infrastructure requires a method to compress this timeline. You do this through high-velocity networking and mission-critical tasks. Step by step, the 100-hour rule for the sovereign works like this. First, you identify a community not based on a map, but based on a shared objective or a specific skill set. Instead of joining a neighborhood watch, you join a specialized collective that is working toward a tangible goal, such as a localized energy cooperative or a professional mastermind group. These environments provide a high density of interaction. Second, you employ vulnerability probes. In the traditional U.S. community structure, vulnerability is seen as a liability. Everyone must maintain the facade of stability. In the sovereign model, vulnerability is used as a filter. By sharing a specific professional or personal challenge early, you immediately filter for individuals who are capable of providing support, rather than just social signaling. Imagine if Sarah, instead of just moving to Denver and hoping for the best, had used a beta testing framework for her new community. This is a crucial step in the Divorce Now deep dive. You never commit your full social equity to a new structure without a trial period. In 2026, this looks like a 3-stage stress test. Stage 1 is the shadow phase. You spend time in the environment, but you do not sign a lease or a contract. You observe the community during a period of stress. Historical trends show that communities look great when the economy is booming and the weather is perfect. The sovereign wants to see the community when the local power grid fails, or when the primary employer in the area announces layoffs. How do the members react? Is there a decentralized support network? Or do they retreat into their individual enclosures? Stage 2 is the friction test. The sovereign purposefully introduces a dissenting opinion or a request for help that is slightly outside the norm. In a brittle, resident-based community, friction is often met with ostracization or passive aggression. In an anti-fragile, sovereign-based community, friction leads to a discussion of values and an adjustment of the social contract. Stage 3 is the exit interview of the former members. Sarah should have looked for people who recently left the Denver collective she was eyeing. Why did they divorce that community? Was it because they outgrew it, or because the structure itself was predatory? Data suggests that the health of a community can be measured by the quality of its exits. If people leave with their dignity and their equity intact, the structure is likely healthy. The relocation of the self also requires a shift in identity. In the traditional U.S. model, your identity is rooted in ownership. I own this house, I am a member of this club, I am a resident of this town. This makes you fragile because if any of those things are taken away, your sense of self collapses. The sovereign identity is rooted in utility and portability. You are not where you live. You are the value you provide and the resilience of your personal network. Consider the potential outcomes of this shift. When you are no longer tethered to a specific physical community, your bargaining power in the labor market increases. You are no longer forced to accept a suboptimal job because you can't afford to sell your house or move your kids. Become a modular unit of high-value labor. Historical trends indicate that as the U.S. economy becomes more volatile, this modularity is the single greatest predictor of financial stability. However, we must address the psychological toll of this transition. Moving from a resident to a sovereign feels like being an astronaut detaching from a space station. There is a moment of pure weightlessness that can feel like falling. This is why the psychological infrastructure must be built before the physical exit. You must have your portable equity, your skills, your remote-capable income, and your core network of 5 to 10 people who are also operating on a sovereign level, ready to go. The sovereign doesn't seek a new permanent home. They seek a series of high-value deployments. They understand that every community structure has a life cycle. You join a community because it serves your current growth phase, and you prepare for the eventual divorce from that community when the growth stops. This is the ultimate application of the divorce now concept. It is a continuous process of alignment. As we look toward the mid-21st century, the ability to relocate the self will be the dividing line between those who are victims of structural decline and those who thrive despite it. We are seeing a historical shift where the most successful Americans are no longer the ones with the deepest roots, but those with the most resilient networks. But there is a catch. To live this way, you have to navigate a world that is still designed for residents. You still have to deal with banking systems, legal frameworks, and tax codes that assume you are a stationary unit of consumption. How do you protect your sovereign status from a system that wants to force you back into a resident box? How do you handle the legal complexities of a life that is geographically fluid but legally anchored? In the next part of this deep dive masterclass, we are going to explore the contractual guardrails of the sovereign. We will look at the case study of the multi-state legal strategy and how to use modern U.S. law to create a protective shell around your autonomy. We are going to dive into the specific language of the contracts you sign in 2026, from lease agreements to professional service contracts, and how to ensure they all have a divorce now clause that protects your right to exit. The loop is tightening. You've built the mine, now we build the shield. What happens when the system tries to sue you back into submission? The moment you stop conforming to the expectations of a static resident, you will likely encounter the friction of the administrative state. In the United States of 2026, our lives are increasingly governed by a web of adhesion contracts. These are the standard take-it-or-leave-it agreements you sign when you open a bank account, rent a high-rise apartment, join a homeowners association, or accept a new job. Historically, these were viewed as simple administrative necessities, but under the lens of the divorce now concept, they are recognized as structural tethering devices. They are meticulously designed to make the cost of departure so high, financially, legally, and socially, that you remain a compliant unit of the system long after the relationship has reached a point of zero or negative utility. Imagine a case study involving a character named Robert. It is 2026, and Robert is a senior strategic consultant in Austin, Texas. Robert has spent the last decade building a life based on the traditional American model of permanent residency and long-term institutional loyalty. However, as he begins to apply the divorce now concept to his professional life, seeking a more modular career, he discovers a non-compete and non-solicitation clause in his employment contract that he signed 5 years ago. This clause effectively attempts to prevent him from working in his specialized field for 24 months if he leaves the firm. This is a classic example of contractual enclosure. Robert is being held hostage by a document signed during a different economic era. The system is attempting to sue him back into submission by threatening his very ability to generate future income. To build a proper shield, Robert must understand the potential outcomes of modern U.S. case law regarding these restrictive covenants. Historically, the trend in states like California has been to void these clauses as a matter of public policy, promoting labor mobility. However, in many other jurisdictions, they remain a powerful tool for structural entrapment. The sovereign strategy for someone in Robert's position involves the negotiation of a preemptive exit clause. In 2026, high-value individuals are increasingly moving away from standard contracts and moving toward mutual portability agreements. This means that for every restrictive clause the institution places on the individual places a corresponding release trigger on the institution. For instance, if the company changes its remote work policy or fails to meet specific diversity or growth metrics, the non-compete is automatically nullified. This is the divorce now clause in action, ensuring that the contract is a living, performance-based agreement rather than a life sentence. Now, let us look at the physical enclosure of the Homeowners Association, or HOA. In the United States, current data suggests that over 75 million people live in HOA-governed communities. These organizations have been granted the legal power to levy fines, place liens on your primary residence, and in some documented case studies, even initiate foreclosure proceedings over relatively minor infractions. They function as a private government with very little of the constitutional oversight found in public institutions. When you apply the divorce now concept to a failing neighborhood structure, the HOA is often the first entity to provide significant pushback. Imagine if Robert wants to convert his home into a modular asset. Perhaps he wants to travel for 6 months to explore new markets and wishes to rent his home to appear in his sovereign network. He discovers the HOA bylaws contains an anti-transient clause that forbids any rental period shorter than 12 months. He is physically and financially trapped by a committee of neighbors. The shield here is the entity-based ownership model. Historical trends show that when a property is owned by a land trust or an anonymous LLC, the legal relationship between the individual and the HOA changes fundamentally. The HOA is no longer dealing with Robert the person. They are dealing with a legal entity that has its own set of procedural protections. This creates a layer of procedural friction that protects the individual's personal autonomy. By decoupling his personal identity from the property title, Robert has created a legal buffer zone. Step by step, building this shield requires a comprehensive documentary audit. You must go through every major contract in your life and look for liquidation triggers. A liquidation trigger is a specific, pre-negotiated condition that allows for a clean break without the need for protracted litigation. In 2026, the most effective sovereigns are those who refuse to sign any contract, be it for a car, a home, or a job, that does not include an unconditional exit pathway. You must look for the severability clause. In many standard U.S. contracts, if one part of the contract is found to be illegal, the rest remains in force. A sovereign, however, negotiates for interdependent severability. This means that if the institution fails to provide even one core service, if the HOA fails to maintain the safety of the common areas or the employer fails to provide the promised resources, the entire contract becomes voidable at the individual's discretion. This turns a one-sided agreement into a symmetry of obligation. We must also discuss the jurisdictional divorce. In the United States, you have the unique legal ability to choose which state's laws govern your personal and professional life, regardless of where your physical body happens to be standing. This is the domicile versus residence distinction. A resident is someone who simply lives in a place. A domiciliary is someone who has their legal home there, where they vote and pay taxes. Case studies of successful modular citizens in 2026 show them using states with favorable laws, such as South Dakota, Wyoming, or Nevada, as their legal anchor. They may spend their time in high-tax or high-regulation states like New York or California for specific projects, but their contracts, their assets, and their legal personhood are anchored in a jurisdiction that prioritizes contractual freedom and wealth privacy. This is the ultimate shield against localized overreach. Historical trends in the U.S. are currently moving toward increasing institutional fragility. As institutions feel their influence waning, they often become more litigious, using the legal system as a weapon to maintain their resident base and tax revenue. If you are a high-value mobile sovereign, you are an attractive target for these institutions. The shield is not about breaking the law. It is about using the existing legal framework to ensure that you are never in a position where the cost of leaving is your entire net worth. Imagine a scenario where a local municipality decides to increase property taxes by 40% overnight to fund a legacy project that provides no benefit to the current community. The traditional resident is trapped. They must pay the tax or risk losing their primary asset. The sovereign, who has built their life on the Divorce Now framework, has already anticipated this possibility. Their assets are mobile, their legal structure is insulated, and their exit is pre-planned and pre-funded. They do not stay and fight an expensive, unwinnable battle against a local bureaucracy. They simply execute their predetermined exit strategy. But there is a final, more nuanced layer to the shield: the social injunction. This occurs when the community uses the legal system or public record, not for financial gain, but for reputational damage. In a 2026 world of social media and instant background checks, a sovereign exit can be framed by the abandoned community as a betrayal or a failure of character. How do you protect your professional and social reputation when you decide to divorce a community that believes you owe them your perpetual presence? How do you ensure that your next high-value community doesn't see your history of exits as a red flag? In the next part of this deep dive masterclass, we are going to explore the reputational equity of the sovereign. We will look at the case study of the clean break, how to manage the optics and the narrative of an exit so that it enhances your market value rather than diminishing it. We will dive into the architecture of the high trust recommendation and how the American elite use siloed networks to move between communities with total fluidity. The loop is expanding. You've built the shield. Now you must learn how to carry it without looking like a threat. What is the fundamental difference between a leaver and a leader? The answer lies in the narrative control of the exit. Narrative control is the difference between being perceived as a person who is running away and a person who is moving toward a higher purpose. In the United States of 2026, where digital transparency is the default and your social credit is constantly being recalculated by algorithms and peers alike, The vacuum left by a sudden departure is almost always filled with negative speculation. If you do not provide the story for your exit, the community you are leaving will invent one. Historically, when an individual left a tight-knit American community, the rumors often centered on financial ruin, moral failure, or health crises. Today, those rumors are amplified by the speed of social networks. To master the divorce now concept, you must master the art of the graduation frame. Consider a case study involving Marcus. It is 2026, and Marcus is a 45-year-old executive living in a highly involved community in the Pacific Northwest. Marcus has been a staple of his local neighborhood for a decade, serving on the board of a local nonprofit and hosting seasonal gatherings. When Marcus decides to apply the divorce now concept to his living situation and his professional obligations to pursue a more sovereign, modular lifestyle, he faces a significant reputational risk. If he simply disappears or gives a vague reason, his professional network might interpret his move as a sign of burnout or a loss of status. His neighbors might see it as a betrayal of the collective effort they put into the area. Marcus avoids this by utilizing the graduation frame. This historical psychological tool frames a departure not as an end, but as the natural completion of a cycle. Instead of saying he is leaving because the community structure is brittle or the ROI is negative, he frames his exit as the successful conclusion of his mission in that specific environment. He tells his board that he has achieved the goals he set out to accomplish, and that the organization is now ready for a new type of leadership. He tells his neighbors that his time in the cul-de-sac has been the foundational chapter that has prepared him for his next project. By framing his exit as a graduation, he maintains his status as a leader while reclaiming his autonomy as a sovereign. Step by step, narrative control begins with the pre-exit whisper campaign. In the sovereign model, you never announce a major shift to the public before you have socialized the idea with your key high-value nodes. Marcus identifies the three most influential people in his social and professional circles. He meets with them individually months before his planned departure. He doesn't ask for permission. He shares his vision for his next phase. This turns these influencers into co-authors of his narrative. By the time the rest of the community hears of his exit, the most respected voices are already saying, "Marcus has done great things here and is moving on to something even bigger." This effectively neutralizes the social injunction. The next step is the contribution handoff. A leaver drops their responsibilities and disappears. A leader ensures continuity. Marcus spends his final weeks in the community not by withdrawing, but by over-delivering on his final commitments. He documents his processes, introduces his successor to his key contacts, and leaves the structure in a better state than he found it. This creates a psychological debt in the community. It is very difficult for a group to castigate someone who has just provided them with an immense amount of final value. This is the ultimate reputational shield. It proves that his divorce from the structure was not driven by animosity or failure, but by a disciplined adherence to his personal growth trajectory. Imagine the potential outcomes of this strategy versus a traditional messy exit. Historical trends in U.S. professional life show that individuals who burn bridges during an exit see a 40% decrease in their referral rates over the next 3 years. Conversely, those who utilize a structured, value-heavy exit strategy often see an increase in their perceived market value. The sovereign understands that their reputation is a portable asset that must be protected at all costs. In the 2026 economy, your resume is less important than the narrative of your last 3 exits. We must also examine the concept of siloed networks. One of the greatest mistakes residents make is having a single, overlapping social circle where their neighbors, co-workers, and friends are all the same people. This creates a high-stakes environment where an exit from one structure results in an exit from all of them. The sovereign, however, maintains distinct silos. Marcus has his professional network in one silo, his sovereign support group in another, and his physical community in a third. This allows him to apply the divorce now concept to his physical community without triggering a collapse in his professional or emotional support systems. This leads us to the 3 Cs of sovereign communication: clarity, continuity, and contribution. Clarity means being precise about why you are moving on, without being critical of the structure you are leaving. Continuity means demonstrating that your core values and your commitment to your high-value relationships will remain unchanged despite your change in geography or contract. Contribution means leaving a legacy that serves as a permanent positive reminder of your time in the structure. In 2026, the digital footprint of your exit is permanent. Every email, every social media post, and every public comment is a piece of evidence in your reputational trial. The sovereign manages this by maintaining a disciplined silence on the negatives. Even if the HOA was predatory or the company culture was toxic, the sovereign never mentions these things publicly. Why? Because complaining about a former partner or structure signals to future partners that you might do the same to them. The sovereign stays focused on the future. They are the protagonist of a story that is always moving forward, and every structure they leave behind is simply a well-loved setting from a previous chapter. However, narrative control is not just about what you say. It is about how you live immediately after the exit. If Marcus graduates from his community but then spends the next 6 months in a state of visible aimlessness, his graduation frame collapses. To maintain the narrative, the sovereign must have a high visibility when shortly after the exit. This doesn't have to be a massive financial gain. It can be the launch of a new project, a significant personal achievement, or a successful deployment into a new, higher-value community. This validates the exit and confirms to the previous community that Marcus was indeed moving towards something superior. As we move deeper into this masterclass, we have to recognize that the divorce now concept is a skill that must be practiced. Your first exit will be the hardest. You will feel the pull of the resident operating system telling you to stay, to conform, and to value longevity over alignment. But with every successful, well-narrated exit, you build the muscle of sovereignty. You begin to see that the American community structure is not a trap unless you lack the narrative tools to unlock it. But what happens when the physical reality of the exit begins? Once the narrative is set and the shield is in place, you are faced with the granular logistics of the modular life. How do you move your life without losing your momentum? How do you handle the sudden shift from a stationary existence to one of constant, strategic relocation? In the next part of this deep dive, we are going to explore the physical logistics of the modular life. We will look at the case study of the zero-day deployment, how to land in a new city and be fully operational within 24 hours. We are going to dive into the gear, the systems, and the data-driven habits that allow the sovereign to be at home anywhere without being tethered everywhere. The loop is closing on your old life. Are you ready to see how the other half actually moves? To understand how the other half actually moves, we must first address the physical weight of the traditional American life. For the average resident in 2026, the home is not just a shelter. It is a repository for an estimated 300,000 individual items. Historically, the accumulation of physical goods was seen as a marker of stability and success. In the framework of the divorce now concept, however, each item that does not provide a direct functional utility or a high-level psychological recovery is classified as physical friction. This friction acts as a silent tax on your mobility. When the sovereign decides to exit a community, the greatest barrier is often not the legal contract, but the sheer volume of material debt they have accumulated. Imagine a case study involving David. It is 2026, and David is a high-level logistics consultant who has spent 15 years living in a sprawling 4-bedroom house in the suburbs of Chicago. David has realized that his physical environment is no longer in alignment with his career trajectory, which now requires him to be present in various emerging tech hubs for 3 to 6 months at a time. To David, applying the divorce now concept to his physical possessions is the first step toward achieving zero-day deployment. He begins with a process we call the return on weight audit. In this audit, David categorizes every item in his life into one of 3 tiers. Tier 1 consists of essential sovereign tools, his high-performance computing hardware, his professional wardrobe, and specialized equipment that is difficult to replace. These items are his modular kit. Tier 2 consists of liquidable assets, furniture, appliances, and general household goods that have a high market value but a high friction cost to move. Tier 3 consists of legacy anchors, items kept solely for sentimental reasons or out of a sense of obligation to the past. Historical trends in the 2026 secondary market show that the cost of moving Tier 2 items across state lines often exceeds their replacement value. David makes the sovereign decision to liquidate everything in Tiers 2 and 3. He is not just selling furniture, he is buying back his freedom of movement. Step by step, David transitions to an infrastructure as a service model. In the United States of 2026, the rise of high-tier, fully furnished flexible housing has revolutionized the logistics of the exit. Instead of spending weeks packing boxes and hiring moving crews, David selects a modular living unit in Scottsdale, Arizona. This unit is pre-equipped with high-speed mesh internet, an ergonomic workspace, and essential domestic tools. By choosing this model, David has outsourced the maintenance and depreciation of physical goods to a service provider. His physical footprint is now condensed into a set of specialized containers that can be shipped or checked on a flight. The concept of zero-day deployment means that when David lands in Scottsdale at 10 in the morning, he is fully operational by noon. He does not spend his first week at a hardware store or waiting for a Wi-Fi installation. Because he has decoupled his professional capacity from his physical location, his income generation remains uninterrupted. Data-driven habits of successful sovereigns show that this lack of downtime results in a potential outcome of increased billable hours and a significant reduction in relocation-related stress. While the traditional resident takes 45 to 60 days to fully settle into a new community, the sovereign does it in less than 24 hours. However, the physical move is only half the battle. The sovereign must also manage the data-driven habits of the transition. In 2026, your digital presence is your true permanent address. David maintains a cloud-based command center that handles his mail scanning, his jurisdictional compliance, and his banking. By using a private mail forwarding service in a sovereign-friendly state like South Dakota, David ensures that his administrative life remains static, even while his physical life is fluid. This prevents the administrative friction that typically occurs with a change of address, such as the disruption of insurance policies or the loss of important documents. This is the legal and administrative shield we discussed earlier, manifested in the daily logistics of movement. Consider the potential outcomes of this modularity. When a traditional resident receives a high-value opportunity in a different city, they must calculate the cost of selling a home, the stress of moving a family, and the risk of entering an unknown market. This often leads to opportunity paralysis. David, however, can accept the same opportunity with zero hesitation. His cost of exit is pre-calculated and minimal. He is a modular unit of high-value labor that can be deployed wherever the ROI is highest. Historical trends suggest that as the U.S. economy becomes more volatile, the ability to rapidly redeploy personal capital and labor is the ultimate hedge against local economic downturns. We must also look at the psychological infrastructure of the modular life. Imagine if David, upon arriving in Scottsdale, felt the weight of isolation. To counter this, he uses his pre-existing sovereign network. Before he even leaves Chicago, David taps into a decentralized collective of professionals who share his values. He doesn't look for a local pub. He looks for the nodes of high-value interaction that he has already vetted. He uses his transition period to over-deliver on his current projects, using the momentum of the move to fuel his professional output. This is the 100-hour rule in action. He compresses the time it takes to build a support system by arriving with a predefined mission and a high-value contribution to offer the new local nodes. The gear David carries is also a reflection of this philosophy. In 2026, the Sovereign's kit is characterized by multifunctionality and resilience. Every piece of technology has a redundant backup. His power supply is portable and independent of the local grid for at least 72 hours. His communication tools are encrypted and decentralized. This is not about being a survivalist, it is about being an independent operator. When the local community structure fails, whether it is a power outage in a suburban neighborhood or a breakdown in local services, the Sovereign is unaffected. They are not a burden on the system, nor are they a victim of it. But what happens to the social equity David left behind in Chicago? Applying the divorce now concept doesn't mean burning the bridge. It means converting the bridge into a permanent, digital connection. David maintains his high-value relationships through scheduled, deep-dive interactions, rather than the passive, low-value proximity of living in the same zip code. He finds that his relationships actually improve because every interaction is intentional. He is no longer seeing people because he has to, but because he chooses to. This is the relocation of the self. He has moved from being a piece of furniture in a neighborhood to being a dynamic actor in a global network. As we conclude this part of the deep dive, we have to recognize that the physical logistics are the most visible part of the divorce now process, but they are driven by the internal shift from ownership to access. The Sovereign owns what is essential and accesses what is convenient. This allows for a level of agility that the traditional U.S. community structure is simply not designed to handle. The loop is now fully closed on the old life. The assets are liquidated, the kit is packed, and the deployment is successful. But once you have achieved this level of physical and professional autonomy, you face a new, more complex challenge. How do you raise a family or maintain long-term intimate partnerships in a world of constant movement? Can the divorce now concept be applied to the most sacred of American structures, the family unit, without destroying the very thing you are trying to protect? In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the sovereign family and the education of the modular child. We will explore the case study of the world schooling movement and how to build a resilient, multi-generational legacy that isn't tied to a single school district. The stakes have never been higher. It is time to discuss the future of the next generation of sovereigns. The concept of the sovereign family begins with the most difficult decoupling of all: the separation of your child's future from a specific geographic school district. In the United States of 2026, the traditional school district is the single most powerful anchor keeping high-value individuals trapped in suboptimal community structures. Historically, the American middle class has been conditioned to believe that the quality of their child's life is directly proportional to the property taxes they pay in a specific zip code. This has created a phenomenon known as the school district trap, where families commit to 30-year mortgages and stagnant social environments simply to access a localized educational monopoly. Applying the divorce now concept to education means recognizing that in a modular, AI-driven economy, the centralized, building-based model of learning is often a legacy system with a diminishing return on investment. Imagine a case study involving the Miller family. It is 2026 and the Millers, Jason, Elena, and their two children Leo and Maya, live in a high-tier suburb of Atlanta. They pay $15,000 annually in property taxes, a cost they justify because their local high school is ranked in the top 5% of the state. However, Jason and Elena have noticed a historical trend. Despite the ranking, the curriculum remains rigid. The social environment is increasingly characterized by proximity-based conformity, and the children are being prepared for a 20th century workforce that no longer exists. They are paying a massive social and financial premium for a structure that is failing to provide the specific outcomes their children need for a sovereign future. By applying the Divorce Now framework, the Millers perform an educational ROI audit. They realize that the $15,000 in property taxes, combined with the hidden costs of commute, school-related activities, and the higher mortgage required to live in that specific zip code, totals over $40,000 in annual educational overhead. They decide to divorce the district. They transition to a model of modular education, which in 2026 consists of a personalized portfolio of learning, a high-tier virtual academy for core subjects, specialized microschools for STEM and arts, and a decentralized social network of other sovereign families. Step by step, the transition to a modular child requires a shift from passive consumption to active curation. The first step is the legal decoupling. In most U.S. states, the legal framework for homeschooling or unschooling has become significantly more streamlined by 2026. The Millers utilize a specialized legal service that manages their compliance with state educational standards while keeping their physical location fluid. This allows them to move their residence according to economic opportunity or lifestyle preference without interrupting their children's learning trajectory. The second step is the construction of the interest-based social circle. A common fear in the traditional resident model is that children will lack socialization if they leave the district. However, the sovereign model replaces proximity-based socialization, where children are forced to associate with anyone who happens to live on their street, with mission-based socialization. Leo and Maya join regional robotics collectives, competitive debate leagues, and outdoor leadership programs that meet in various locations. Data from case studies of modular learners in 2026 shows that these children often develop higher levels of social intelligence and networking skills because they must navigate diverse social environments rather than one static peer group. This brings us to the rise of world schooling as a professional-grade strategy. In the sovereign family model, geography is not an anchor, it is a curriculum. When Jason's logistics firm requires him to spend 3 months in the Pacific Northwest, the family does not stay behind in Atlanta. They deploy as a unit. The children's education adapts to their environment. A month in Seattle becomes a deep dive into marine biology and aerospace engineering. A month in the high desert of New Mexico becomes an immersion in solar technology and geological history. The potential outcomes of this model include children who are not just academically proficient, but culturally agile and highly resilient. They learn early that their value is not tied to a building or a town, but to their ability to learn, adapt, and provide value in any context. We must also address the psychological infrastructure of the sovereign family. To succeed, the parents must divorce the concept of the parent as a manager and move toward the parent as a lead architect. In the traditional U.S. community structure, Parents often outsource the primary development of their children's values and skills to the school system and the neighborhood. The sovereign parent reclaims this responsibility. This requires a high-intensity commitment to the 100-hour rule of connection. Because the family is often in transition or moving between modular hubs, the internal bond of the family unit must be the primary source of stability. Imagine if the Millers, instead of being stressed by their commute and their neighborhood obligations, use that reclaimed time to engage in collaborative projects with their children. They are not just living together. They are operating a small high-performance organization. They hold weekly strategy meetings, they manage a family budget that includes educational investments, and they practice the divorce now concept together by auditing their own habits in social circles. This teaches the children the most important skill of the 21st century: the ability to recognize when a structure is no longer serving them and the courage to exit it. Historical trends show that the most successful families in American history, from the pioneers to the modern tech elite, have always prioritized mobility and specialized networks over geographic stability. The current obsession with staying in one school district for 12 years is a historical anomaly that peaked in the late 20th century. In 2026, the data indicates a sharp return to the modular family. Families who embrace this shift see a potential outcome of reduced household stress and increased long-term wealth, as they are no longer forced to overpay for real estate in bloated school zones. But what about the legacy? In the US, we often think of legacy as a family home passed down through generations. The sovereign legacy is different. It is a legacy of skills, networks, and a resilient mindset. Jason and Elena aren't leaving their children a house in a suburb that might be in decline in 20 years. They are leaving them a portable equity in the form of a global network and the ability to navigate the legal and financial systems of sovereignty. They are teaching their children how to build a shield and how to control their narrative. However, the application of the divorce now concept to the family unit introduces a final, highly sensitive challenge. What happens to the marriage itself when the traditional anchors of the home, the mortgage, the local school, the neighborhood social pressure, are removed? When you remove the structural reasons for staying together, you are left with the raw reality of the partnership. Does the sovereign life strengthen the bond? Or does it expose the cracks that the suburb was helping to hide? In the next part of this deep dive masterclass, we are going to explore the sovereign partnership and the intimacy of choice. We will look at the case study of the intentional marriage contract and how to apply the divorce now mindset to maintain a high-growth relationship without the pressure of social compliance. We are going to dive into the logistics of a modular couple, how to handle dual careers, personal growth, and the relocation of intimacy in a world without walls. The loop is tightening on the most personal structure of all. Is your relationship a partnership of growth or a contract of convenience? When you remove the external scaffolding of a traditional American life, you are left with the raw, unvarnished reality of your partnership. In the United States of 2026, most marriages and long-term domestic partnerships are held together by what sociologists call structural glue. This glue consists of the 30-year mortgage, the shared health insurance plan, the fear of social ostracization in a tight-knit suburb, and the logistical nightmare of untangling a decade of accumulated physical property. Historically, this glue was seen as a feature of a stable society, designed to keep the family unit intact through periods of turbulence. However, under the lens of the divorce now concept, we recognize that when a partnership is held together by structural necessity rather than active choice, it enters a state of high-friction stagnation. Imagine a case study involving Chloe and Ryan. It is 2026, and they have been married for 8 years. For the first 7 years, their relationship was defined by the milestones of the traditional U.S. community structure. They bought a home in a reputable North Jersey suburb, they managed a shared calendar of neighborhood social events, and they focused on the maintenance of their joint estate. They were successful residents, but they were failing as partners. They realized that their conversations were dominated by logistics, who was mowing the lawn, when the property taxes were due, and how to handle the latest HOA dispute. The external structure was so loud that they could no longer hear each other. When Chloe and Ryan decided to apply the divorce now concept to their living situation, they essentially performed a stress test on their marriage. They liquidated their suburban assets, moved into a modular, high-flexibility living arrangement, and decoupled their finances from a specific zip code. Suddenly, the structural glue was gone. They no longer had the house to talk about. They no longer had the neighborhood reputation to protect. They were forced to confront the central question of the sovereign partnership. If we didn't have to be together for the sake of the infrastructure, would we still choose to be together today? This is the transition from a contract of convenience to a partnership of growth. Historical trends in 2026 show that as more American couples move toward modularity, the nature of intimacy is shifting from location-based to mission-based. In a traditional U.S. community, intimacy is often passive. It is the byproduct of sharing a physical space for a long duration. In a sovereign partnership, intimacy must be active. Because the cost of exit has been lowered by their modular lifestyle, the incentive to provide value to each other must be heightened. Step by step, Chloe and Ryan utilized the domestic ROI audit to rebuild their partnership on a sovereign foundation. The first step was the identification of third-party interveners. They looked at every aspect of their relationship that was dictated by external expectations, family traditions they didn't enjoy, social circles they outgrew, and financial goals that were inherited rather than chosen. They systematically divorced these external pressures, creating a vacuum that they could fill with their own shared values. The second step was the implementation of the 2-year alignment protocol. In the traditional U.S. model, marriage is a static, one-time contract. In the sovereign model, Chloe and Ryan treated their partnership like a high-performance organization. Every 24 months, they conducted a formal renegotiation of their shared goals, roles, and boundaries. They didn't assume that because they were in alignment in 2024, they would automatically be in alignment in 2026. This protocol removes the complacency that often leads to emotional estrangement. It forces a continuous state of active consent. The third step was the relocation of intimacy. In their previous life, Chloe and Ryan's bond was tied to their home. When they moved, they had to learn how to carry their intimacy with them. They developed what we call a portable ritual. Whether they were in a modular hub in Boston or a temporary deployment in Seattle, they maintained a core set of shared practices that were independent of their physical environment. This created an internal stability that was far more resilient than the stationary stability of their old suburban life. Data-driven analyses of modular couples in 2026 indicate a fascinating potential outcome. While the initial transition often leads to an increase in short-term conflict as the structural glue dissolves, the long-term result for those who survive the transition is a significant increase in relationship satisfaction. When you know your partner is staying because they want to be there, not because they can't afford to leave, the level of trust in the relationship reaches a depth that is impossible in a high-enclosure environment. However, we must also examine the case studies of those who do not survive the transition. For many couples, the divorce now concept applied to their community reveals a fundamental misalignment that was being masked by the distractions of the suburban lifestyle. When the house is gone and the social calendar is cleared, they realize they have nothing in common. In the sovereign framework, this is not seen as a failure, but as a successful diagnosis. By identifying this misalignment early and exiting the partnership with the same narrative control and legal shield they used to exit their neighborhood, they prevent decades of future resentment and wasted personal capital. The sovereign partnership also requires a new approach to professional and personal autonomy. In 2026, the potential outcomes of the dual sovereign household are immense. Chloe, as a cybersecurity analyst, and Ryan, as an AI ethics consultant, are no longer tethered to a single labor market. They can move to where the highest value opportunities exist for both of them simultaneously. This eliminates the traditional trailing spouse syndrome, where one partner's career is sacrificed for the other's geographic stability. By being modular, they both remain high-value assets in the economy. But to maintain this, they must navigate the social injunction of the extended family. Historically, American parents and grandparents have viewed the modular life with suspicion, interpreting a child's decision to leave a stable community as a sign of instability. Chloe and Ryan handled this by utilizing the graduation frame we discussed earlier. They didn't tell their parents they were becoming nomads. They told them they were graduating to a more efficient and resilient way of living that would allow them to be more present for the family in the long run. They used the increased disposable income from the modular lifestyle to fund high-value, intentional family gatherings that were far more meaningful than the low-value, mandatory Sunday dinners of the past. The intimacy of choice is the ultimate goal of the divorce now concept. It is the realization that the most sacred structures in our lives, our families and our partnerships, should be the ones that are the most aligned with our true purpose. In the United States of 2026, we are moving away from the era of accidental communities and into the era of intentional unions. The sovereign couple doesn't seek a house with a white picket fence to keep the world out. They seek a partnership that serves as a launchpad to engage the world more effectively. As we reach the conclusion of this deep dive into the sovereign partnership, we have covered the mind, the shield, the logistics, and the family. We have seen how to liquidate social debt and how to relocate the self. But there is one final piece of the puzzle. How do you integrate all of these concepts into a single cohesive blueprint for the rest of your life? How do you move from the theory of the divorce now concept to the permanent practice of American sovereignty? In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to unveil the new American blueprint. We will look at the case study of the first sovereign network state, a decentralized community of high-value individuals who have successfully divorced the old structures and are building something entirely new. We are going to provide the final step-by-step checklist for your own 2026 deployment. The loop is about to close and the gate is wide open. Are you ready to see the final destination of the sovereign journey? The final destination of the sovereign journey is not a coordinate on a map, but a state of permanent alignment. In the United States of 2026, we are witnessing the birth of the first sovereign network state, a concept that represents the ultimate application of the Divorce Now framework. To understand where this journey ends, we have to look at the new American blueprint. This is a shift from being a subject of a geographic monopoly to being a member of a decentralized network of high-value individuals. Historically, Americans identified themselves by their city or state. In the era of the sovereign, you identify yourself by your network and your capability. The destination we are discussing is the Horizon Collective. Imagine if 500 families, all of whom have applied the Divorce Now concept to their previous lives, decided to form a community that has no permanent physical borders. This is not a commune or a gated development. It is a network state. The Horizon Collective exists as a cloud-first organization with physical nodes in various U.S. cities like Austin, Boise, and Charlotte. Members do not sign 30-year mortgages. They hold membership tokens that grant them access to modular housing across the network. They have collectively negotiated for their own group health insurance, private security, and educational microschools. They have successfully divorced the brittle, localized community structures of the past and replaced them with a resilient, portable infrastructure. To enter this final phase of the masterclass, you must execute the 2026 deployment checklist. This is the step-by-step methodology for moving from a resident to a sovereign. Step 1 is the social and financial liquidity event. As we saw with James and David in previous sections, this is the process of converting your stationary liabilities into mobile assets. In 2026, this means moving at least 60% of your net worth into highly liquid, diversified instruments that are not tied to a single local real estate market. It also means the social liquidation of every commitment that does not provide a positive return on investment. You must become a social minimalist before you can become a sovereign leader. Step 2 is the establishment of the legal domicile anchor. To be truly modular, your administrative life must be static while your physical life is fluid. Case studies of successful 2026 sovereigns show them using states like South Dakota or Wyoming as their legal headquarters. These states have historical trends of favorable tax laws and strong privacy protections for trusts and LLCs. By establishing your legal domicile here, you create an administrative fortress. Your mail is scanned and uploaded to a secure cloud. Your car is registered in a jurisdiction that doesn't require annual inspections, and your professional contracts are all governed by the laws of your choosing. This is the shield that allows you to move through high-friction states without becoming entangled in their local bureaucracies. Step 3 is the modular kit finalization. You have already seen how David reduced his 300,000 items down to a high-performance kit. The final deployment requires you to have a zero-day kit that includes not just your tools, but your energy and communication independence. In 2026, this means a portable power station capable of running your entire professional setup for 72 hours and a satellite-based internet link that bypasses local infrastructure. This ensures that no matter where you are deployed, your ability to generate value remains at 100%. You are no longer dependent on a local utility company or a neighborhood cable provider. You have divorced the grid. Step 4 is the 100-hour social protocol implementation. This is the most critical step for avoiding the trap of atomic loneliness. The sovereign does not wait for a community to find them. They carry their community in their pocket. Before arriving at a new node, the sovereign has already identified the 5 to 10 individuals in that location who share their mission. They use decentralized professional networks to vet these individuals and schedule high-value interactions. By the time they land, they have a pre-existing support network ready for deployment. Historical trends in the 2026 labor market show that individuals who use this protocol see a 30% higher rate of professional success than those who rely on traditional, proximity-based networking. Step 5 is the exit-ready operating system. This is the mental shift where you realize that every structure you enter, from a new apartment lease to a new professional partnership, must have a pre-negotiated divorce now clause. You never enter a room without knowing where the exits are located. You treat every commitment as a performance-based contract. If the community, the company, or the partnership stops delivering the agreed-upon outcomes, you execute the exit strategy you prepared on day one. This is not about being cynical, it is about being disciplined. It ensures that you never again find yourself in a state of structural enclosure. Imagine if everyone in the United States began to operate this way. The potential outcomes are transformative. Local governments and community organizations would be forced to actually provide value to retain their members, rather than relying on the friction of exit to keep people trapped. We would move from a society of passive compliance to a society of active competition for excellence. The divorce now concept is the ultimate market signal. It tells the world that your presence is a choice, not a necessity. Consider the case study of a character named Elena. It is late 2026, and Elena has completed her sovereign deployment. She lives in a modular unit in the mountains of Utah for the summer and moved to a coastal node in Florida for the winter. She runs a global consulting firm that has no physical office. Her children are world schooling, learning from the best specialists in every city they visit. Elena's partnership with her husband is stronger than ever because it is based on a daily choice to remain in alignment rather than a legal or financial inability to leave. Elena is the protagonist of the new American blueprint. She has successfully navigated the transition from being a piece of the architecture to being the architect of her own life. The final destination is the realization that the U.S. community structure is not a prison unless you treat it like one. The fences, the zoning laws, the social norms, and the administrative traps are only effective if you lack the liquidity and the narrative to bypass them. Once you have built the mind, the shield, and the kit, the entire country becomes a high-speed playground for your growth. You are no longer waiting for the world to change. You have changed how you engage with the world. As we close this 10-part deep dive masterclass, we have to address the final open loop. We have discussed how to exit the old systems and how to build the new modular life. As more and more individuals embrace the sovereign path, the legacy systems are starting to notice. The administrative state is already beginning to propose new exit taxes and digital nomad regulations to curb this mobility. The battle between the resident and the sovereign is only just beginning. How do you defend your sovereignty when the system tries to rewrite the rules in the middle of the game? What happens when the network state faces its first major legal challenge from a stationary government? And most importantly, how do you ensure that your children's sovereignty is protected in a future where data is the only real currency? The loop isn't just closing on your old life. It is opening on a global struggle for autonomy. In our next series, we are going to dive into the counter-sovereign response and the defense of the digital estate. The era of the divorce now concept is here, and the only question left is, are you a resident of the past or a sovereign of the future? Prepare your kit because the deployment starts tonight.